Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Guys, welcome back to r/EntitledPeople, where people think that they can do whatever the heck they want, whenever they want, because they're special. And in today's episode, guys, OP is shocked when she finds random strangers at her home because her entitled dad thought that it's a great idea to just give away his daughter's apartment, the one that she pays for. Guys, I hope you enjoy the stories today. Hit subscribe if you haven't, and as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. So back in college, I lived in a 6-man apartment-style dorm that shared living spaces and 3 bathrooms. Some of my roommates had guests over one weekend when I was out of town, and when I got back on Sunday night and went to shave, I noticed that my razor had curly hairs in it with bits of shaving cream. Now, I always clean my razors, so I knew someone had used it. Now, I didn't think much of it, but it was one of those expensive refill razors, and later on, one of the guys, while laughing hysterically, told me that he used my razor on Saturday night when he had a hot date with this one girl. The guy then went on to say that he hoped I didn't mind, and that it was well worth it since he got laid. I was really upset at what this idiot had done. So I told him I was okay with it, but he should probably get checked for hepatitis. The guy then asked what I meant, and I told him that when I was on vacation in a third world country when I was little, I got into an accident requiring a blood transfusion and contracted hepatitis from a dirty needle. Now, of course, that was a lie, but the entire group hearing this just dropped silent, and the offending a-hole just turned white. I then said to him, "I'm sorry, man, I didn't expect you to use my razor. You'd better get it checked." The guy actually had the nerve to call me an a-hole after this, and he asked if I was serious. And I said to him, "I'm dead serious. You shouldn't use people's things without their permission." A few hours later, my roommate pulls me aside and asked if it was true, and that he hopes not since the guy's vacation is ruined. I told him, yes, it's 100% true. I'm guessing his friend must have had a panic attack, and I never did tell anybody it was a joke. Okay guys, I just want to say that this guy deserved that scare 100%, especially after using it to shave his downstairs and then bragging that it was well worth it because he got laid. Like, the guy's a freaking idiot for using a random person's razor. Like, it's common sense, right? A razor is something that you shouldn't share with anyone for sanitary reasons. And honestly, I just want to see that guy's browser history for the first few days. It was probably like, can you get hepatitis from sharing razors? Is hepatitis curable? Can you die from hepatitis? I use someone's razor, is that okay? The list probably goes on and on. Okay, so this story doesn't involve me directly, but I witnessed my first Karen incident at the gym today. So here's a bit of explanation about the layout of the gym swimming pool and locker rooms. There's 4 locker rooms for people that want to go swimming. Male, female, disabled, and a family room. Pretty standard. In the locker room, there was a girl changing, and she wasn't indecent. She was putting on her bra, and she was in underwear. The girl was in her locker trying to get her clothes. I was almost ready to leave, and was maybe 4 or 5 lockers down from her. Usually, I don't pay any attention to what happens in the locker room, but today, I couldn't help but notice one woman, our Karen, looking horrified. Now, this woman was getting her son, a boy who's maybe 2 or 3 years old, ready to go swimming. The woman didn't look like a typical Karen type. She didn't give off any indication that she was gonna go off on one. But then she did. The woman, with her horrified expression, walks over to the girl and taps her on the shoulder. The girl jumped, clearly surprised that someone was talking to her. She turned, and before she even turned to speak, the woman starts talking. Now let me remind everyone so we're on the same page. This is a female locker room for a gym swimming pool. It's not uncommon for women to walk around in towels, underwear, or even stand around naked. There's nothing out of the ordinary about a girl in her underwear. So the girl's startled and says, "What?" The Karen just says, "Cover up." Hearing that, the girl didn't say anything. She just turns around and tries to get dressed. And the Karen did not like this, saying, "Excuse me? Look at me when I'm talking to you." At that, the girl turns around and gives her a "Are you serious?" look, but the woman didn't think anything of it, and she kept going and said, "You need to put on some more clothes. I don't want my son exposed to the female body when he's so young." At this point, I'm just looking around, making eye contact with other people in the locker room, confirming that this was actually happening and I wasn't imagining it. I exchanged looks with 3 or 4 women, almost all of them accompanied by their own children, and no one seemed to agree with the woman's opinion. The girl was visibly annoyed, saying, "What the heck are you talking about? I'm trying to get dressed." so leave me alone and stop being a creep. The woman says, I'm the creep? You're showing off too much body. My son doesn't need to see that at such a young age. The girl tells her, I just want to get dressed in peace, lady. But Karen wasn't finished. She says, I should speak to a member of the staff and get you banned. In fact, you should be arrested. Public nudity is a crime, you know? At this point, one of the other moms speaks up and says, she's allowed to be in her underwear in the change room. Why are you having a fit about that? It's stupid. The woman didn't expect that reaction, and she says, because my son should not be exposed to the female body at such a young age. The other mother was in attack mode, and she said, did you breastfeed your son? The Karen says, of course. The woman then goes on and says, then why is it a crime for your son to see a girl in a bra when he fed from your breast and know what they look like? The Karen says, because that's different. I was feeding my baby. He's my son. Now by this point, I'd been ready to leave for about 5 minutes, but I was sticking around for the drama. However, I was getting tired of Karen and her backwards logic, so I pitched in as well saying, Miss, if you're so against your son seeing women dressed indecently, then why did you choose to come into the female locker room instead of the family locker room? And that's when a third woman chimes in with, why are you taking your child swimming in a place where he can see women in swimsuits, which show off their bodies, if you don't want him to see women's bodies? This threw Karen off her game for a moment, before she tried to claw her way back saying, well, most women just wear a one-piece swimsuit, and it would be unfair on me to be segregated from the other women by going into the family room. At this point, I just rolled my eyes, said, whatever lady, and walked out of the locker room. Now I have no idea how much longer the woman went on with her rant or if anything else even happened. It was my first real life experience with a Karen out in full force, so it was a bit of a wild ride from start to finish, but I hope I never run into another one again. Honestly guys, sometimes I really wish I could understand the logic of some people. Like, it's a freaking locker room. How did that Karen expect people to go from wet swimsuits into dry clothes without getting naked in the process? I'm just glad Karen got told by the other women in that locker room for picking on that poor girl for changing. Oh, and OP does come into the comments saying that she asked staff a few days later if Karen did complain about that girl, and she actually complained. Some people are truly in their own little worlds, guys. Alright, so to add some context, I'm a female who's 25 years old, and my parents are so crazy to the point where me and the majority of my family had to cut them off. My dad is no contact, and my mom calls on occasion. My mom also tries to overstep, such as inviting him to family events that he's specifically not invited to. A little bit about my dad is he's very entitled. He always tries to steer every conversation he has with people into talking about himself. He also often argues with people, threatens their lives, etc. So needless to say, sane people don't want these issues in their lives. An example of how entitled he is one time he threatened my life because I wouldn't give him my personal information so he could take out loans in my name. Like, that's an obvious no. My dad is also delusional and narcissistic to the point where he thinks he's famous, and he claims that everybody runs up to him for pictures all the time. And he even tells random people about it to try to get his way. Obviously, these are all lies, and a lot of the time people just laugh at him, but he thinks it's with him and not at him. He also likes to pretend to be a big shot, and he's lost all of his friends due to his poor behavior. So back to the story. My dad's apparently told people that he owns an apartment, my apartment, that he lets his daughter, me, live in. So I guess he told some people who needed a place to live that they could stay at his spare apartment. My apartment. Now, Dad probably got my address from my mom, due to the fact that no one I know speaks to him. So one day, I get a knock on the door from my apartment manager saying there's some people at the gate saying that they're here to move into my unit. And is that correct? Hearing her say that, I was just as confused as she was. Mind you, it's my place. I pay the bills, I pay the rent, and I did not even know he knew my address, let alone sent people to my place. So I go out to meet these said guests, and there was so much confusion. There were 3 people, 3 random sketchy older looking men standing there with bags, and I asked what's going on. My building manager stayed because she wanted to know what's going on and wanted to help sort it out. The 3 men then proceed to tell me that they're moving into their new place and they were here for the keys. One man said, "Oh, we know Bob, and you're his daughter, right? He said to just show up at the apartment and ask for you, and that you'd give us the keys to our new apartment." We all looked, and I asked to see what the address was because we thought maybe it was the wrong address. And no, it was my address. The guy then said, "Your dad said he kicked you out because you're freeloading and you refused to pay him rent, and that you're supposed to hand us the keys today." By this time, all 5 of us were confused. They then try to call him to sort it out, and he's not answering at the moment. So I explained to the guys, I don't know how you or he got this address because I haven't spoken to my dad in over a year. And I don't know how I'm freeloading or what he's told you, but this is my apartment that I pay for, and I don't know what's going on. And I'm sorry, but you're not getting my apartment keys. Y'all need to figure this out with him, but I have no place for you. I'm sorry. They then try to get me to call him, and I said no. Calling won't change anything, and this isn't my problem, so I can't help you. And by the way, I want to note that these guys did not seem threatening. It was just random and weird for all of us. I then hear one guy on the phone talking to my dad, and he puts my dad on speakerphone. I can hear my dad telling him that she's lying, that the place is his, and that he needs to tell me to give them the keys to their new apartment. At this point, one of the guys and my building manager are looking at this like it's odd, and he looks embarrassed. My manager steps in at this time, and she told the men, "You all must have the wrong place. She's on the lease, and she's the only one on the lease, and you'll have to leave and sort it out." Now I can say that despite them looking sketchy, they were as calm as they could be in their odd situation, because in all honesty, the only fault they had was believing my dad. They thought they were moving into an apartment, and if I was in that situation, I would not be happy either. After apologizing and before leaving, I heard one of them say, "I knew something was up. He's always lying." I asked the guy, "What did he tell you?" One of the men said, "Well, he told me he had a spot for us to all move in, all furnished and paid for up to the end of the year. He said he kicked you out because you were freeloading and not paying rent." I said to him, "Well, like your friend said, my dad's a liar, and I don't know how, why, or what made him do this, and I never gave him my address, and I don't even talk to him. So I'm sorry, but I hope it works out." Now, I don't know what my dad thought would happen, but like I said, he's delusional and he probably assumed that what he was saying was true. And the funny thing is, he thought I'd have no say. Like, it's all so crazy that I can't even attempt to understand this. I also told my manager, "Thanks, and if anyone comes when I'm not home, please give me a call or call 911. And if I have a guest coming, I'll be home to greet them." My goodness, guys, like what the heck? Like, how in the world did dad believe in his mind that this was gonna work as planned? Oh yeah, just show up to one of my many apartments that I own, and my daughter is just gonna give you the keys and let you in, and that's your new home now. I just feel bad for those guys. Like, I hope they didn't end their lease or something somewhere else and are now homeless, because that would be so unfortunate. And guys, if I were in OP's shoes, I'd be looking to move somewhere where dad doesn't know, because that man is definitely not in his right mind at all. So I work at an unnamed major craft supply retailer. A couple of weeks ago, we had the pleasure of meeting a woman who would ruin our night. It was 5 minutes to close, and this lady, who we'll call Sandy, comes in and she grabs a cart. I'm up at the register and I tell her, "Hey, just so you know, you've got like 5 minutes before close." The woman's on her phone, so she ignores me. I check out the rest of the customers in the store, and it's now 5 minutes past close. My manager, another employee, and myself can hear the woman talking on the phone in the seasonal area. So I approach her and say, "Hey, just so you know, we're closed. I can ring you up at the front." She then tells the person on the phone that some employee is complaining because they're closed. She then tells me that she's coming to the front right now and that she'll see me up there. 10 minutes later, she finally comes up to the register with a cart full of merchandise, and it takes like 10 minutes to check her out because she wants to know the price of every single item, tries to use coupons, and changed her mind about specific products multiple times. I finally finished, and she heads out the door and we switch the door lock. We then hear a shatter, and we look out the window, and the woman drops a glass item in the road between the lot and the store, and she just keeps walking. My coworker frustratedly goes outside and she sweeps it up, and we're cleaning and getting ready to go. And that's when we hear frantic banging on the door. Mind you, it's about 25 minutes past close at this point. The other employee opens the door, and Sandy's yelling that she thinks she left her keys in the store. At this point, it's a liability to have a customer in the store. The employee tells her this, and she screams that she's gonna call the police because her property is in the store, and that we're stealing from her. The manager then calls the store manager, and he instructs that we can let her in if we chaperone her around while she looks for the keys. The woman spends about 15 minutes looking in the seasonal section, and we're all looking with her, desperate to go home. The woman's crying and yelling at us for not letting her in right away when she asked. So after searching the store, she tells us that she's gonna go look in the parking lot. So we wait for another 5 to 10 minutes. We then look outside, and she's sitting in her car with the engine on. We asked if she found her keys, and she tells us that they were on the ground right next to her car. And I'm thinking I wasted 45 minutes of my life for that. Perhaps it's a stretch to call her an entitled bitch, but I'm not sure where else the story fits. Yeah, so she's definitely an entitled B for that, guys, and honestly, I'm surprised she actually lost her keys. I was expecting her to bang on the door, tell that little lie so she could go back inside the store to buy more merchandise. And seriously, I feel like the supervisor should have refused service at that point, like when she came up to the till 25 minutes past close. Because if people like her keep getting special treatment, you'd better believe it'll keep the entitled mentality going strong. But at the same time, I've never worked retail, so someone please let me know if you encounter someone like this that stays in the store half an hour past close. Can you refuse service or kick them out? So this all happened last night, and I still can't believe someone would do this. I'm 30 years old and a paramedic, and I've been in EMS for the past 8 years and absolutely love my job. Last night, we were dispatched to a 75-year-old female who fell at home. The patient stated that she tripped over her carpet and she hit her head when she fell. We arrived on scene and noticed that the home was a duplex with our patient's door on the right and her neighbor's door on the left. We make our way inside the home and we found her lying on the floor. The woman was awake and breathing, and we start asking her the standard questions like, "Are you okay? Does anything hurt? Do you remember falling?" etc., etc. She states that she has a pounding headache and that she remembers walking to bed and then waking up on the floor. In my field, that's a pretty big red flag, and we noticed that she's got a pretty good lump on the side of her head and a pretty big bruise starting to form already. Noticing the bruise, I asked her if she was on blood thinners. She said she was on blood thinners for a previous stroke that she had a few years ago. We then urged her to let us take her to the hospital because there's a possibility that the fall could have caused a bleed in her brain, and that she should go to the hospital to get some scans done. The woman agrees, and we begin to package her up. We applied a C-collar around her neck, just in case of any neck injuries. She denied any neck or back pain, so we lift her up and placed her on the stair chair. A stair chair is exactly what it sounds like. It's a chair with tracks that we use to carry patients up and down stairs. As we're getting her out of the house, her neighbor whips the door open and she starts yelling how she can't sleep with all the lights and noises outside. The sound of the stair chair apparently woke her up, and she wasn't happy about that. My lieutenant walks over to her and apologizes and said that we were dealing with a medical emergency and that we're leaving soon enough. The Karen neighbor then noticed that our patient was her neighbor, and that's when she starts yelling something totally different. The entitled neighbor starts yelling, "You can't take her to the hospital. I have errands to run tomorrow and she needs to watch my kids." My lieutenant then again reiterated that we were here for a medical emergency and that her health is way more important than her errands. The entitled neighbor then lets out a loud huff and then slams the door in his face. Now we thought that was the end of it, but we were wrong. After a few minutes in the back of the ambulance, we told our lieutenant that he could take the engine crew back to the station and that we were going to be heading out in a few minutes. After we checked her vitals, got an IV going, and started the IV fluids, my partner gets out of the back and went to the driver's seat. 5 seconds later, the back doors of my ambulance flies open, and who do I see? The entitled Karen, of course. Apparently, she needed a few minutes to get dressed before coming outside. I then yell at her saying, "Hey, what the heck do you think you're doing?" The Karen yells back, "I told you she can't go to the hospital. She has to watch my kids tomorrow." She then starts trying to pull the cot out of the ambulance with our patient on it. Now luckily, she had no idea how to unlatch the cot and she could not get her out. Our patient then says, "I can't watch your kids tomorrow because I fell and I might be having a stroke." The entitled neighbor then yells back at her and says, "You're fine. You don't need to go to the hospital because you're not having a stroke. You can talk." My partner hears the commotion and he goes to the back of the ambulance and pulls her off the cot. I slam and lock the doors, and you could tell the entitled neighbor was about to become combative. It's also important to know that either the police department or the sheriff's department responds to our calls when it's at night. Because of where we were, it took a few minutes for the sheriff's department to show up on the scene, but he got there just in time. Now I couldn't hear much through the door, but I saw the officer get out of his cruiser with his taser drawn. My partner then runs back to the driver's seat, starts heading to the hospital, and the last thing I saw through the back windows was the entitled neighbor stomping towards the officer, and then her hitting the ground after being tased. It was super satisfying to watch. I was talking with my patient and asked what that was all about, and she said that the entitled neighbor will just drop off her 3 young kids off at her house and leave her for several hours at a time with no notice. My patient had no idea that she was supposed to watch the kids at all because, again, the entitled neighbor never gives her a heads up about these things. Like I said in the beginning, this all happened last night, so I don't have any updates, but I'll post an update when I learn more. Guys, that is some crazy entitlement, right? There's no way I'm letting you go to the hospital because that's gonna inconvenience me. Who's gonna watch my kids? And guys, I'm glad the Karen got tased because I don't even know what to say. She must have needed that woman to watch her kids pretty badly because she just did the dumbest things ever. She charged at a sheriff and she tried to pull that woman back out of the ambulance. Like, people are crazy. So OP does come back with an update that says that the woman was in the hospital, she didn't have a brain bleed, she just has a nasty looking bruise on her face, and she's most likely going home soon. As for the neighbor, there's no update. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our / entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's crazy stories. I hope you didn't shake your heads too hard. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy Karen stories. And guys, if you missed the last episode on the channel, I'll link it right here. It's an r/petty revenge, where OP's Karen neighbor will not stop having loud parties, and OP frickin' destroys her. It's such a funny story, so go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.